I would tell them to listen to every single episode of the Real Estate Rookie podcast. And if you can truly listen to every single episode and actually pay attention, you will know so much more than you have to know to actually go make offers. And there will be no doubt in your mind that this works. And there's always a way to make it work. And even if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, there's always a way out. There's always a way to find help. I feel like that was the biggest catalyst for me because I would binge that podcast. I probably have listened to every episode.
Hey, what's up, all my real estate peeps? This is Brian Lucier with another episode of the Why Not Real Estate podcast. Here on this show, we like to dive into real estate where I believe, in my personal opinion, long-term buy and hold apartment buildings is the best investment class out there. We interview a lot of different people with a lot of different stories. And today, it's my honor and privilege, our special guest today. She is a Massachusetts-based business owner. She owns a beauty salon. She's also a full-time real estate investor and a mentor and coach to other women and investors. She began her investing journey in 2021 as a path to early retirement. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that in a few minutes, and has since grown her portfolio to be in the 30-door residential units. I know she's got a little story about that she's going to tell us as well. While focusing on her long-term rentals, she also has experience in short-term rentals, medium-term rental spaces. She's currently invested in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Illinois, and specializes in value-add multifamily projects, off-market acquisition strategies, long-distance landlording, and creating opportunity via partnerships with other investors. She's passionate about inspiring other young women to get into the investing game, which I totally commend her for that. And when she's not tending to her portfolio, tending to her business, or doing some outreach in the wholesaling space, working in and on her salon, going to yoga, taking care of herself, and spending time with her family, it is our privilege to have her as a guest here on our show. Ladies and gentlemen, all my real estate peeps, I would like to introduce you to Jessie Dillon. Welcome to the show, Jessie.
Wow, what an introduction. I think that's probably the best one I've ever gotten.
Well, hey, good news. You'll be getting the raw footage and the final cut. So if you want to use it for any of your marketing strategies, SEO, absolutely be my guest. So I want to thank you for being on the show, and I'll tell my peeps how you got here. We have guests on the show, and they'll recommend people that they think we absolutely have to have on this show. And one of our last guests reached out and said, you have to have Jessie on this show. So it's our pleasure and honor to have you with us today, Jessie.
Yeah, thank you. I was so pleased when you reached out, and Zach, the guest who you're speaking to, we met a couple years ago now through Bigger Pockets, which is funny because we go to the same meetups and we've gotten to know each other more that way, but it's just so funny all the little things that transpire from these connections that you make through real estate, much of which is all online. Like I feel like most of us meet our real estate friends on the internet, but so much can come from these relationships. It's crazy.
And it's a lot of fun. I love doing these shows, and I'm so excited to have you on because I don't know what I'm going to learn, but I'm looking forward to it. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to jump right in with our first question.
Sure.
Okay. So can you tell our platform a little bit about your background and what you used to do before getting into real estate, and then bring us fast forward to where you are today?
Yeah, so I've worked in the beauty industry for a little over 10 years. And in 2017 is when I went off on my own and started just being a solo service provider. What I do in the beauty industry is called permanent makeup. So I tattoo eyebrows, eyeliner, lip color. Essentially, it's just helping people wake up with their makeup, feel a little more polished, perfected, right rolling out of bed, have to spend less time on a morning routine. Um, and I've been doing that since that time. And I really fell in love with building my business, learning organic social media marketing, just learning this whole entrepreneurship thing because I had left my day job, with a very half-baked plan to make entrepreneurship work, even though I didn't really have any mentors. No one in my family, was self-employed, but I really fell in love with figuring it out and figuring out how to make money that way and open my own studio and just make it all come together financially. I did such a good job though that a couple of years in, I was getting really burnt out. I was spending a lot of time working in the business, and that's in addition to working on the business behind the scenes. And I didn't really realize until I was forced to take a break in 2020 when we had to close for 3 months. That was when I realized just how much of maybe my personal life, my family life, my physical health I was sacrificing because I was just 24/7 thinking about working on or working in this business. And, you want to get into self-employment so that you can have more control over your life and design it the way you want it to look. But I felt like this business had become a ball and chain that needed constant love and attention. I didn't really feel like I built this freedom for myself that I wanted to. So that's when I realized I had to figure out a way to slowly get out of working in the business quite as much. And I fell down the whole internet rabbit hole of the fire movement. And it was all because of a Facebook clickbait article, actually. I was scrolling on Facebook and there was a New York Times article about this Instagram influencer. Her name is Millennial Money Honey, and the tagline was that she was retiring in her late 20s. So I clicked on it. I'm like, I need to know whatever this girl's doing. So I read her whole article. It was all about the FIRE movement. And for anyone listening who doesn't know, that stands for financial independence and retiring early. Most people in this community, they very aggressively invest in index funds and aggressively try to lower their personal cost of living to speed up their retirement timeline. I had actually reached out to her on Instagram and I explained what was going on in my life. And I was like, if you could recommend one book, what would you recommend? And she recommended The Simple Path to Wealth. So I read that book. I absolutely loved it. And I started really aggressively investing in index funds. And I was doing a great job because I was making so much more from my business than I was ever used to making at my day job. So I had a good like 70% savings rate every month. But I realized that it was still gonna take me about 11 years of going that hard to retire that way, and I knew I didn't have it in me. And one podcast led to the next, and someone was talking about real estate investing and about how you could really achieve that work optional status in more like 2 or 3 years if you really played it right, and that you don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to come from a family of investors to be able to get into the real estate investing space. So I had heard that podcast summer of 2021. And that fall, I just totally dove into it. I became a student of investing. I spent a couple months listening to podcasts nonstop, reading all the books, paying for the coaching calls, doing the boot camps online. And it was Thanksgiving week of 2021 that I finally felt comfortable making offers on my first property. And I had closed on that first one January of 2022.
Happy
So
Thanksgiving.
that's the long-winded story of how I got to this point and why.
So, what a great Thanksgiving it was in 2021, huh?
It was, yeah. It was an exciting time.
So that was that euphoric light switch where bang, you put your offer out, you landed your first deal. So fast forward us here 3 years later. What do your portfolio and holdings look like now? And I think I saw a note from your one sheet that there was a deal on there
Mhm.
that may or may not have happened. And you might want to, maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you want to tell us that story, I'm all ears.
Yeah, so in 2021, really close together, actually. In the span of 9 months, I bought my first three properties. And the
Wow.
first two I actually bought while I was still a renter. Um, and this was all in a higher cost of living area. So this was across Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So they all came with pretty high purchase prices, in comparison to other parts of the country. So I was kind of tapped out after that. First, I had bought a long-term rental duplex, maybe like 20 minutes away from me. Then I had bought a single family home that I was going to do short-term rentals with about 2 hours away from me. Then I came across a really great house hack opportunity just down the road from where I grew up, and that's one of my favorite deals to date is the house hack because we took our mortgage of $4,000 and brought our obligation down to about $1,000 out of that. So love the house hack. Um, but soon after, I was realizing, I got kind of tapped out doing it myself because you can only come up with down payments so quickly when you're in an expensive area. And I had realized, that I needed a certain number of units about to achieve my more passive income goals. And it was really going to take teaming up to get there. I knew that I had the time and knowledge to keep going faster, but I couldn't keep building up those down payments as fast. So that's when I started diving into partnerships, um, and figuring out really what I was looking for in a partner and what I could offer a partner. And I ended up finding someone whose goals really aligned with mine. We were looking for the same things. We were kind of working on the same timeline, and we each really saw the value of what the other person could bring to the partnership. So this past summer, so now this is summer 2023, we closed on a 13 unit in Chicago together. And I'm planning on continuing to do a couple more deals like that via partnerships like that this year. I did actually have one under contract very recently. Really similar deal to that one, 13 units, value add out in Chicago with a different partner. And unfortunately, that deal fell through. So I'm happy to elaborate on that too. I feel like a lot of times, people only highlight the things that have gone well. So happy to dive into something that didn't really go as planned. And in the meantime as well, last year I had also sold one of my properties that just wasn't doing quite as well as I wanted to. And I had also made a little bit of money wholesaling. I did one really amazing wholesale deal through a JV partnership last year as well.
So you've covered a lot of ground here, and I've got some questions.
Yeah.
No, this was really good, and I love hearing the story from, it's just you build this stuff out of thin air, and then all of a sudden, poof, you've got real property that you can touch and improve value and do value add.
Hmm.
So from 2021, within the first 9 months, you nailed your first three properties, the duplex, the other property, and then from 2021 up until what time frame did you do your first partnership? How many months, how many years was before you did that partnership?
Good question. So it was August of 2021 that I closed on the house hack, and October 2021 is when I went to my first BP con. And that's really where I had the light bulb moment that I didn't do anything wrong by running out of capital. It was just kind of a rite of passage that I feel like every investor gets to a certain point where you run out of one of the resources that investing requires, and you have to partner up if you want to keep going. I think it's very, very few investors who can truly go it alone, for the whole course. So that was October 2022.
2021. Oh, 2020.
October 22 now, yeah. So it was only a couple months after I bought the house hack that I went to BPCon and realized, I want to open my mind to partnerships. And soon after that, no more than a couple months later, I was introduced to this ideal partner. We decided we were going to go out and look for a deal together. And it actually took about 6 months, 5 or 6 months of not making the right offers. for me to realize that we had to take a different path. So we had been making creative offers on market properties. Um, and it was kind of a rookie mistake of mine looking back because I was trying to make these on market deals into home runs by offering creatively on them when there were 100 people in line behind me that were happy to get just a base hit with a traditional offer. So, a seller who is willing to go on market and is not in a rush or in pain, of course, they are going to be more likely to take a traditional offer. And it's always hard to communicate the details of a creative offer through agents as well, like just as another layer of complications. So, I had decided where can we invest long distance where we can achieve our cash flow goals. We have 20% down, and we had together landed on Chicago. We had a couple different cities we were looking at. So after 5 or 6 months of making these on-market offers, and it was just really beating a dead horse, it was a Friday that we decided together we were gonna start looking in Chicago, and we were under contract on Monday.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that was now this past spring, so this is spring 2023. We had closed on that property in July, and the same week, I actually also closed on that wholesale deal, so that was a pretty good week.
Wow. So you hit BBCon 2022 October?
Yes, I also went this past October as well.
Leave it to real estate investors, right?
I know,
Think
yeah.
Yeah, think of ways to capitalize on a market. Wow. Um, so I got a couple questions here about the partnerships. I've been taking copious notes as we go, and you'll say something. It's like, okay, I want to know more about that. So here we are. I'm going to backtrack all the way back to your partnership. You had realized that you had strengths that you brought to the table, and you found your puzzle piece match that had the opposite strengths that
Mhm.
they needed to bring to the table. So I don't like to say strengths and weaknesses. That's positive and negative. So I'm just going to go positive, positive. What were the strengths that you brought to the table, and what were the complementary strengths your partner brought to the table to make it whole?
Yeah, so I think the simplest way to put it is that real estate typically takes time, knowledge, and capital. So if you only have one of those or two of those, you need to find someone who has the missing pieces. And at that point, I did not have the capital to keep going alone, but I did have the time and knowledge to keep going. So the ideal partner for me was going to be someone who did have the capital, but maybe did not have the time or knowledge to keep going.
Oh. And that was your puzzle piece
Mhm.
match fit. Okay. And then 5 or 6 months on the wrong offers. You talked about that. You were trying to be creative in a conventional space. And then what there had to be some trigger to wake up one morning and say, okay, so maybe this isn't what we should be doing. And like from Friday to Monday, how did you figure out it was Chicago?
Well, I have a lot of peers who invest in the Midwest and, cities where the price to rent ratio is a lot more appealing than it is in New England. And I had talked with a bunch of, peers of mine who I've met through different online networking groups and just kind of picked their brain about other cities. Um, there's tons of people who I look up to and follow on Instagram who always speak to certain cities in the Midwest that they love. And I did my research on maybe 5 different options, and then I went to my partner and I said, I think we should look into doing this instead. What is your comfort level like with these different cities?"
Hmm.
And we had decided on Chicago together because that's actually a city where she, knows a bunch of people who live there, and she travels there for work sometimes. So, it'd be that much easier to just get boots on the ground, a couple times a year. But, yeah, we had decided together on a Friday. I had shared a couple deals, that were listed on LoopNet with her, and we went over the numbers. And what's funny was that and I say this all the time, like the crappiest deal there looked so good to me through the eyes of a Massachusetts investor. So I'm like, wow, all these deals are pretty good. This is crazy. Which, makes me realize now that there are even better deals available off market, or, if I was to get something creatively out there, it'd be so much better. But yeah, this deal really checked all the boxes for us, and we wrote an offer on Saturday and we're under contract on Monday.
Wow. Cinderella story.
I know.
That's wow. So, for those of you peeps out there listening, she checked all the boxes. She did her research. She checked her network. She double checked her market. She went back to her partner, figured all this stuff out. Target, aim, shoot, dinner table. Within 3 days from Friday, you had a closed offer on Monday.
Mhm.
Huh. I
Yeah,
love,
the first one that we wrote an offer on out there.
my goodness. So you've also talked about some of your influences. That's segue kind of the next question. So I just want to touch on that and then we can kind of move on. So you were a business owner, you burned or almost burned out. I don't want to say burned out. Um, you hit COVID and that gave you that pause to realize where you were. You started the investing thing, you found the woman online, you read the book, you did the stock market for a while, started to investigate, and then all of a sudden, at some point in time, real estate came into the focus. And what was it about real estate that kind of like caught your attention? Because you had your irons in the fire in two or three different other areas. What was it that really appealed to you about real estate?
Two big things. One was that just the timeline, I knew that having to go as hard as I was going to continue saving 70% of my income and investing it in index funds for 11 years was not going to be possible for me. So I knew there had to be some other way. So the timeline was the biggest thing, knowing that I could build my wealth faster through real estate. But the second piece was that, you know, real estate was something where I would have more control over my success than I would in the stock market. Um, I was not going to be someone who was going to try and stock pick. I was just going to invest in index funds. But with real estate, I knew I could use the lessons that I've taken away from building a business and treat real estate investing like another business and get results better and faster that I could control the success of. So that was the second big piece is just, it was something that I knew if I really did my homework and used my business building skills, I could do really well.
Wow. Kudos on you. I mean, just I've talked to so many people and they've connected the dots so many different ways. You're the first person who's come to the table and said, because of my business acumen and how I know to run a business, I could kind of wrap that around real estate as an industry and treat it like a business. That's
Mhm.
you've come to it from the other side of the coin. So many people started off like a hobby and then say, oh, maybe I should like get some operations and some checklists and figure all this out and turn it into a business. If I'm correct, you started thinking, okay, this could be a business based off of what I've done in the past. So
Mhm.
if I'm correct, you started it as operational right from the get-go.
Right. Mhm.
Wow. You're a smart cookie.
I try. Yeah, I think I only had, one or two properties and small ones before I started really banging out the SOPs and making sure the org chart looked right. And I try to set all of that up, behind the scenes on paper so that at any point, if I was to step away for a month and be unavailable, my assistant would know exactly everything that has to be done, how to log into everything, who to contact for everything. Um, That's really the goal, to set it up in that way where, if I disappeared for a month, everyone would know what's going on in the business. And I feel like that's the measure of success as far as, is the business run like a business? Is it organized? Or is it messy?
So I've got questions now. Real estate aside, you're talking so much about business. I want to ask the question, what influences did you have to start a business? What type of, was there a book or something that you just thought, okay, so you're a professional makeup artist. Is that a PMU? Am I saying that
Mhm.
correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point in time, you said, look, this is something I really love to do. And you turned it around and looked at it. Okay, so this is going to be a business. So how did you, or what influenced you to think of something that you enjoyed and loved to do and turning it into a business? How did you make that transition?
It definitely wasn't something that I went all in on, all at once. First, it was just, I'm going to start doing this on the side of my day job just to make extra money. And then it was, okay, my day job's actually costing me money now, because if I had an extra day to do this side hustle, I could be making so much more money. So at a certain point, I had to just kind of take the leap of faith and leave my day job and just hope for the best, hope that my time would fill up, with this side hustle. And at first, I was just doing services from my house. And then a peer of mine inspired me to go rent a space in an existing salon, and that it was always going to be scary and that it was never going to feel like the right time, and I had to just do it, and I was never going to fall on my face, because I was putting so much into trying to get my name out there and promote myself on social media and encourage my clients to make referrals. I was really putting in all that work. um, so then I had rented space somewhere just 2 days a week. And then I needed 3 days a week. And then I needed 4 days a week because I was getting so busy. And then at that point, I realized, well, I should just go off on my own then, have my own studio space closer to home, have lower overhead, have more control over the way things are run. But then it became, there's a lot of space here. There's a lot of time that the space is not being used. So maybe I should bring other people in to just use this space that I created while I'm not using it. So it was kind of, the plan had evolved multiple times. I had renters, and then I had employees, and then I went back to having renters. I have a great team of renters now. I have 5 girls who rent space for me there. And um, it's really just nice to have a community of women who all have really similar passions, and we can all talk to each other just about the craft, like what we do. um there was also a time in that business when I got really into business coaching, and I created an online mentoring program just for other permanent makeup artists, and would do monthly coaching containers for up to 10 people at a time. um and I've kind of gotten away from doing that more consistently. I still do just one-off 60-minute coaching calls. But yeah, I mean, the vision that I have for the business has just been ever evolving. And I don't think it was any one person or one thing or one book that gave me the confidence to go out and do it. I think it was just consistently, every 3 months saying, how have things looked? How do I want them to look different?
So many similar, so many similarities. I, my background was graphic design, and I was buying real estate at the same time, and I hit that same threshold you mentioned, where I was starting to lose money doing the graphic design because I was paying other people to maintain the property. And it was just, it's time to jump into the deep water head first and
Hmm.
swim or sink. So the business coaching, that part is interesting as well. But I'm going to jump back. The SOP, the org charts, all that's important. Was there like any guide or course or anything? Like some people go to business courses and stuff like this? Were you just like a sponge absorbing? How did your osmosis work to become a business owner?
I think it was just a lot of different little pieces. Like I followed lots of people on Instagram who talked about how to effectively run or build a business. I would listen to different podcasts about it, but I also got to take a lot of tips away from my day job. I was an education manager at a big beauty retailer, and we had used org charts and task management software that then I knew, okay, as the workload is becoming more and more in my business, I need something like that. So, especially when I had brought on my assistant, we needed a way to easily get a glimpse at here's everything that goes on in this business. Here's what I do. Here's what you do, and to communicate new tasks through it, without being just messy texting back and forth about stuff. Um, so again, I think it was just something that was just ever evolving, and I just sort of picked up little tips here and there. Um, I think it makes a big difference just making sure that there's always information in front of you about how to do what you're doing better. So that's why, most people that I follow on Instagram are people who are a couple steps ahead of me with real estate, or a couple steps ahead of me with business, or with, personal development. Um, so that stuff's always just being put in front of me.
As you were talking about renting a day, then 2 days, then 3 days, and then it sounds like you may have actually purchased your own salon.
No, so I still rent the space that my studio is in.
Okay, so that gets me to where I'm going. So, not to coin a BP phrase here, but you're salon hacking.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I guess it's like salon arbitrage, which is it's pretty popular in the beauty industry, yeah.
Like barbershop and everything. One guy owns a
Mhm.
shop and other barbers come in. So,
Yep,
yeah, you're salon
exactly.
hacking 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are, and then everybody goes home and
Mhm.
you open the door the next day. So, wow. I love that I've got a business owner on here because I can relate to so many things you're bringing to the table, and thank you for your candor to share all this. So I'm going to jump ahead here. Um, you've been investing now 5, 6 years.
I've owned the business since 2017, but I've only been investing for like 2.5 years.
So I'm going to focus on the real estate end of it.
Mhm,
20, what was it, 2012? Oh, 2021. So
mhm,
3, 4 years as a real estate investor.
mhm,
Okay, so as a real estate investor, this question has two prongs. So I'll put it out there and then have you answer one half, and then we can focus on the other half. So if you could go back in time when you started investing in real estate, what piece of advice would you have given yourself starting out that you know now?
hmm. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give anyone, and I feel like I kind of had already learned this for myself after leaving my day job to open a business, but this would still be the biggest piece of advice I would give to anyone, is to just only take advice from people who are doing what you want to be doing. I think with entrepreneurship in general, but especially real estate investing, everyone's a naysayer. But it's always the people who really have no experience who are the most anti real estate investing. And I think a lot of times, people share what they are looking to do with friends and family who may have heard a bad story from, an uncle or someone who had a bad landlording experience, or, it always comes from just a concern. They don't want you to get in trouble. They don't want you to have a bad experience. They don't want you to lose money. Um, but again, I think no matter what you're doing, maybe only take advice from people who are doing what you want to be doing.
So another part of that is those friends and families don't want to lose you
Mhm.
because they see you growing and it scares them that they're not pursuing some form of self growth. And
Mhm.
yeah, I've been 20 plus years in this. I've seen some close friends that, we just don't see the world the same way anymore. So to that point, you got to seek out people to share the vision that you need to see and reveal that to you so you can see it.
Mhm.
So if someone, and it might be the same answer, but if there were a newbie starting out today, knowing nothing about real estate, what advice would you give to someone starting out today?
I would tell them to listen to every single episode of the Real Estate Rookie podcast. And if you can truly listen to every single episode and actually pay attention, you will know so much more than you have to know to actually go make offers. And there will be no doubt in your mind that this works. And there's always a way to make it work. And even if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, there's always a way out. There's always a way to find help. I feel like that was the biggest catalyst for me because I would binge that podcast. I probably have listened to every episode. And when all the episodes kind of started to sound the same and I wasn't really having big takeaways from each one, besides just people's personal stories, like there wasn't really a lot of new technical information about investing that I was getting. That's when I knew I needed to maybe pause on consuming new content and actually just go do the things.
Hmm. I have a good friend who says you can't learn to ride a bike by reading a book.
Mhm.
You got to get out there and pedal your, you know what.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna jump into a deal now, and I'm guessing which one it's going to be, but I'm going to let you tell the story. What would you say in it? And I might be wrong because you keep saying the house hack, but I'm kind of leaning towards that 13 unit. I want to hear both stories, right? So, what would you say in your investing career is the best deal you'd ever done? What type of property was it? How did you find it? How did you finance
The best deal I've ever done probably is the 13 unit. I I'm always hesitant to say that because I never wanna undersell the power of house hacking to anyone who hears, you know, the concept of buying a 13 unit and is like, "I'm so far away from that. I want nothing to do with that yet." So sometimes I'm compelled to talk about the house hack, but, the 13 unit is on paper the best deal that I've done so far. So it's 13 units. They're actually all bigger units. Half of them are two beds, half are three beds, and there's also one bedroom unit. Um, we had paid 1.06. We got a pretty good seller credit as well. So our effective purchase price was more like 1,015,000. We put 20% down. Um, and we have only owned it for about 6 months, but the value today I estimate to be just over 1.5.
it?
So our leverage, we had started out with a commercial loan for 80%, but based on how much we've been able to force the value of the building up just by improving the management and getting the rents closer to where they should be, um, we're significantly less leveraged with that property now. It just feels good. I mean, everyone likes the feeling of having less debt, obviously, compared to the value of the building. Um, but we now have something around 700,000 of equity in this property, which is pretty huge. And on day one, the monthly cash flow after all reserves, after our debt and everything, was only about $800 a month. It will max out more like 6,000 a month, and right now we're at like 3,500 a month. So in just 6 months, we've really made huge strides with the value add process. Obviously, it's not maxed out yet, but we're hoping to, by the end of this calendar year, we're going to start to take cash flow out, take profit out every month. We just want to get through some more um, deferred maintenance and just small items like adding laundry and stuff like that.
So how did you find this? Was this the LoopNet deal?
Yep, this was on LoopNet.
And financing this?
Financing, we did a commercial loan. So it's a 25-year AM, 5-year fixed, 20% down. And my partner had brought all the capital to the deal. So she brought the down payment, closing costs, and reserves.
So with her putting in the 20%, you both signed on the note?
Mhm.
And what was it a 50-50 split? How did you structure that deal?
Yeah, so it's owned in a trust that each of our LLCs are 50% beneficiaries of. So we each own half the building and we each get half the cash flow.
So smart to do it that way. I keep referring to these trusts and LLCs as these nested Russian dolls. You open up the doll, you see another doll. You open up the doll, you
Yep.
see another doll. So you never see the final person. So
Mhm.
that's so smart to do. So I want to run down your numbers here and put a timeline to it, because I always love to figure out the ROI, the time, money value here. So you had 1.06 was original purchase price.
Mhm.
With seller's credits was about a million. Was that correct?
Yeah, 1,015,000.
1,015,000. And what was the time frame from closing that deal moving forward? I did the rough at 1.5 million was just under 500K. You mentioned that you got your equity up to 700K. What was the timeline to get from 1,015,000 up to 1.5 or whatever that looked like?
And it had appraised for 1.1 at the time of closing too. So we closed this past July and I redid my estimated market value just last week.
6 months.
Mhm.
This is where it gets fun for me. I'm going to need another sheet of paper. Okay, this is why I love the show. And I am actually on the last piece of paper in my notepad. It's been a great
Oh
year.
boy.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now I got to look at these numbers here. So you had produced 700K in equity in
Mhm.
6 months.
Right.
Gracious.
Granted, that does also include the down payment. So we didn't create 700, but we now have a total of about 700.
Okay, so let let's peel this back a little bit. Okay. So at closing, it appraised
Mhm.
at 1.1.
Yes.
And 6 months later, you refied. What did it appraise at?
We haven't done a refinance, but just based on how much we were able to get the rents up closer to where they should be, I just did a market analysis on it, and the value should be around 1.54 right now. I'm looking at my notes now.
Okay, so
And we owe about 840.
the appraised was 1.1, but you bought it at under that at 1.015. Okay, here's where I have some fun. Okay, so easily $100,000 a month. And the
Yeah.
20%, this is the fun part, right? Yeah, so 200,000 was give or take your down payment.
Mhm.
I love the numbers here. 50K a month.
Yeah. It's been a pretty good deal so far.
So that number resonates real close to a starting salary of someone getting a good job graduating out of college per year.
Mhm.
You're nailing that per month.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we are nearing we've kind of hit the biggest turning point already with this property, and there's definitely room to grow the value more. I think when we had originally bought it, I estimated that, if the rents were all truly at market rent right now, it would be worth more like 2 million. So there's still a lot of room to bring the value up. But of course, now, most of the tenants are in year-long leases, so we won't really be able to move the needle too much for another year. But I always plan anyways for the value add process to take up to 3 years just in case. And then when it goes this well in the first 6 months, it's just a nice surprise that I could have predicted but would not have relied on.
So even without having the rents up to get it to the $2 million value, you're
Mhm.
33 to 35% ROI, return on your investment of 200K into the deal.
Mhm.
That's a smoking hot deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good
And
one.
there's a lot of deals like this out there. People will always say that there's no good deals because of the rates and the prices and this and that. But even now, after doing this one deal out there are multiple agents who email me pocket listings every week out in Chicago that have really similar numbers to this.
You have your team built in Chicago?
Mhm.
Can you put me on your mailing list?
I could do that. Yeah.
Please
I
do.
really, really love the people that I've been working with out there, and I think that's a huge reason that this deal has gone so well. When we were under contract on this deal, I interviewed about 30 different property management companies, 30, which was no easy feat. And it was so funny that all said and done, the first one that I had talked to was the one that I ended up going with, and they've been amazing.
Huh. Yeah, you're in a market out there in Chicago, average 75K a door on this deal ish.
Mhm.
Okay, so I got to ask some more numbers here. So I'm going to say 33% ROI, which is fabulous, right?
Mhm.
You're making your money back, God, real fast, in a third of a year, right?
Mhm.
Not even a year, not even half a year. So what type of value add, if any, did you have to do to this property? Was it cosmetic? Did you have structural stuff you had to do? What was the dollar value on your value add for this 13 unit?
I mean, the being 5 units and up, the value is really just based on the net operating income. So the biggest value add play with this was just that the rents were so far behind, and that's why it was priced accordingly. But there was also some deferred maintenance. There was a $10,000 plumbing job that we had to do in the basement right off the bat, which we knew about before closing. Um, we had to do pretty extensive turnovers on 2 units that were each something like 13,000. Because again, some of these units are much bigger, and if the whole unit needs all new flooring, then right off the bat, that gets really expensive. Um, we had to replace a furnace. There was some HVAC work that had to be done that was about $4,000. Um, the only other bigger ticket item that's left to do is some masonry work, which will be about 5,000. And we also want to invest 10,000 into adding laundry to the basement. But there isn't anything crazy that has to be done. I think at some point we will most likely want to do a full tear off with the roof because it just wasn't done very well. Um, but yeah, there's really nothing super crazy. It's just a lot of little stuff. The sellers were definitely just tired landlords. They were getting a little bit older. I believe one of them was sick and they were out of state as well. Um, so I think they just kind of couldn't really keep this building optimized anymore.
Okay, so you're at 55-ish,
Mhm.
55,000-ish for that whole laundry list.
Mhm. Yeah, and based on the inspection report, we had gone into it saying, if we were going to bang out every single item on this list right away, it would be probably around 100,000. So that's why we just went into it saying, between our seller credit and cash flow, we're just not going to pull money out for maybe a year while we get through this whole list.
So you're still you're still at great numbers here, having to put 55 into the deal. You're at what, maybe 29, 31% ROI? You're still
I
gonna
will
get all
trust you on that because I'm not as quick with math.
oh,
I have to
never
do it
mind.
all out. I would need to really focus.
No, 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 that's, it's still a good deal. I mean, you had to
It's
drop
tough calculating the ROI too because my partner had brought all the capital to the deal, so her ROI is a little different, you know? We can't look at the whole return of the deal. We have to really just look at, her portion compared to the startup capital. Um, but
so
even
she
so, I mean, for a deal that she really doesn't have to do anything for, it's a pretty great return. And her return on investment, I think, is something like 3 times as fast as what she could have expected in the stock market. Like what we've achieved so far for her portion is would have taken 3 times as long, if not way more, if her money stayed in index funds.
so you're at a 50-50 split, the trust with the two LLCs, so is every dollar profit
Mhm.
split 50-50?
Yep.
Okay, so she's around 15% ROI and you're at infinity.
Mhm.
Infinity is a pretty nice rate of return.
It is. It is a
It,
nice rate of return.
you said
Technically,
best.
no, because we have to also think of, the opportunity cost, like the time spent on this deal could have been spent doing other things, and who knows what would have come from those financially. But yeah, just to be the devil's advocate here.
That's okay. I mean, sometimes you have to do that because, real estate is not always looking at it at rose-colored glasses, which I'm sure that
Mhm.
$10,000 plumbing thing was not rose-colored glasses, but a different color glasses. Um,
Yeah, there was a certain color that was going on for
yes.
sure with that issue. However, I actually did have rose-colored glasses with that issue because while that was happening and while I was, paying the bill for that, I couldn't help but just think like a year ago, I was so envious of people who had this problem. Like people who were dealing with these problems in this way for deals like this. I was so jealous of them and just admired them, and now I'm the one that having problems like that. It was really cool, actually.
Now you are them.
Yep. Now
Is
I
them.
get the $10,000 plumbing bills.
Well, okay. So yeah, we have not even factored in the 27.5% depreciation on this, which would figure into your ROI. I'm just
Mhm.
looking at cash in and cash out, not the tax
Right.
or anything like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, why would you not do this?
I know. Yeah, this was a great deal. So I really, going into 2024, the plan is to do 2 or 3 more very thoughtful deals like this and similar partnerships. Um, Finding the deals is not an issue. The time is not an issue. Um, it's really just a matter of finding the right people to do these deals with because I'm very much relationship based. I do not believe in finding the deal and then scrambling to find the money. So, I'm just kind of slowly talking with different people and trying to really find that ideal person to do the next deal with so that then we can go out and find one together.
So I wonder if there's any direct flights from Aruba to Chicago. I mean, yeah, is that where we
That'd
are?
be a that'd be a weird flight path. I don't know who would be going there from
I'm
Aruba,
gonna
but
check my notes here and make sure I'm gonna end up in the right airport. Yeah, Chicago. That's gonna be an overnight bag trip for sure. Wow. All right, so this is really cool, and this is all out of state.
Mhm.
So not only are you pulling down a great deal with some great numbers, but you're doing it like thousands of miles away.
Technically, like, just under 1,000 miles away, but yes. But I think what makes that so doable is, again, it comes back to having a background in running a business, because I know a lot of investors who go long distance, and it really flops for them because they don't realize they have to still be the asset manager. They
Right.
put full trust and control in the property manager and think that it can be a hands-off thing now, when really you still have to be the asset manager.
Yeah.
So because I have the experience and the time and the mental space to still be that person, I think that's what makes it work so well out of state, and which is why I wasn't really worried about going out of state either.
So Massachusetts has direct flights to Chicago?
They do.
They do. What airline?
I always go JetBlue. I can't speak to any other ones.
Okay, JetBlue works for me. We do all our mileage and points there because we have to go from Aruba to Boston to LA, and we're always JetBlue. So we have to go to Aruba to Boston anyways because we've got offices in all three locations. So how many hours from Boston is Chicago for you?
It's probably like maybe 2.5, maybe 3.
Two movies. Two movies on
Yeah,
Jet.
it's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might not even be that long.
You watch Barbie and a documentary, boom, you're there.
Yeah, good balance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've watched so many of the movies on JetBlue. I have watched Barbie and a little disappointed. I was kind of heartbroken that they didn't hook up at the end. Spoiler alert, but yeah, that's okay. Barbie,
I finally watched Barbie on my last JetBlue flight to Key West in December. And I think after hearing about so many people being disappointed about the movie, I was not expecting anything. So I was pleasantly surprised by it. And my favorite part was the cameo of Ryan Gosling, like discovering the role that men play in the regular world. That was like the funniest thing to me. So yeah, I actually kind of liked it.
trucks and horses.
Yep. Just so many horses.
So many horses.
So many horses. Yeah, that was cute.
So yeah, I mean, how did you, anyways, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole that I'm not gonna get out of if I do that. But yeah, I was hoping that they would hook up at the end and be like a romance thing, but that's
Well,
okay. Soft spot in my heart. All right. So I'm gonna open up the door here for you. The house hack deal, you have a lot of that was a really good deal for you as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that story as well? And I probably won't go so deep on the numbers, but I'd love to hear the story.
yeah. So after, making those first two purchases while I was still renting myself, after that, everyone in my life was like, okay, are you just gonna rest now? Can you just be happy with having done these two deals so close together? I'm like, yeah, 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 I'm gonna rest now. Now I'm happy. I'm just gonna, work on what I have going already. But the perfect opportunity came along, not even a mile away from where we were living. And when I say we, it's me, my husband, my stepdaughter. Um, we were living across the street from my parents, like a mile from here. And this deal came up and it's a duplex. It's very small, but our side is actually really big for us. But it's a smaller building for being a duplex. It's in a really, really nice neighborhood in a really nice town. A town that we definitely would not have thought we could afford to live in previously. Um, and what's funny is before I ever even discovered real estate investing, we were making offers on single family homes for ourselves. We probably wrote 20 offers. And this was in the peak of the crazy post-COVID market. Um, we probably wrote 20 offers. We did the love letter with everyone. There was one there was one home that we really loved and we actually offered $100,000 over with an escalation clause, no inspection. We did the love letter and we still got beat. And it's so funny looking back because it's so clear why none of those houses worked out for us. Because then I discovered real estate investing, and then we found this great house hack. So it's a duplex. We bought it off of a flip. Um, our side is newly renovated, and the other side is a little dated. The exterior is all renovated. We paid about 590. And the plan was to use an FHA loan and put down just 3.5%. Great.
Nice.
But I didn't know about FHA loan limits. So halfway through closing, I realized we actually had to put down 8% because there's a limit to how much you can borrow on an FHA loan for each county and based on the number of units. So based on that limit, I had to come up with an extra however much, so I had to put down a total of 8%. So we actually almost had to back out of this, but we, brought it together in the final hour. And our mortgage on this property is about 4,000 a month. And the total rent that we get ranges from 3,100 to 3,800 because we have a long-term tenant in one side, but we also midterm rent our guest room. So when we have a true travel nurse midterm renter in there, the last time we were getting 1,700 a month for that room. Right now we have more of a long-term renter in there. It's actually a friend of ours who pays 1,000 a month. So right now we get 3,100 a month from the building. So we pay about 900 a month. And even when we consider, and that's inclusive of taxes and insurance. And even when we consider the utility cost, because some we of course have to pay for the whole building, it's still cheaper for us to live in this house than it is what we were paying to rent our apartment a mile away that was in a less desirable neighborhood. It was much smaller. It actually had like no living room. It was like not a very functional apartment. Um, but we love our house so much now. So we pay less every month and are building wealth every month through debt pay down and appreciation and tax benefits. Um, and we pay less. It's
You,
crazy.
you can't even get a one-bedroom apartment for $900 a month.
Oh my God, no. Especially not, in a nice neighborhood. Definitely not.
And I mean, you touched just briefly on that 27.5 year tax deduction you get as a real estate investor. So yeah, I mean, that that's like icing on top of the frosting that get
Yeah.
the tax deductions. And you're a business owner. There's real estate everywhere.
Hmm.
There's your intent to go get groceries. If you picked up that flyer in the front of the store that's got all the listings on it, you went there to get the flyer. Oh, and while I was there doing work, I picked up some milk and eggs.
Hmm.
So your intent as a real estate investor, it's everywhere. You can't get away
Hmm.
from it. I love this stuff. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that, I mean, the house hack part of it, like I get why you love that so much. I mean, sure, the big glamorous 13 unit, it's like, no, I could never pull that down. I don't have 200K. You figured out a way around that. You did the partnership. You're both making out okay. Your return's great. Her return's great. We looked at that without even figuring the taxes. But for you to be able to provide for your family a better environment to live in for a fraction of what you could rent, that's like gold.
Hmm.
So anybody who's listening to this, if you're thinking about it, or if you're even on the fence, just rewind that part where she's talking about getting the duplex, making it work, and that limit, that 3% limit. If I mean, if it were a little bit cheaper property, maybe it wasn't 8%, maybe it would have been 5% or something like that. But that
Hmm.
still beats the pants off of trying to come up with 20, 25% down.
Oh, especially around here. Yeah.
Yeah. This is
And the
Massachusetts.
house, yeah. And house hacking brings up a good point too of there are so many people that I tell about our house hack that say, they would never rent a room to someone. They would never even want to share a wall, like have a duplex with a tenant on the other side. And um I think renting out a room and sharing a bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, I can see how that really would not be suitable for a lot of families, or a lot of people just would be unwilling to do it. But it just brings up a good point of, well, what are you willing to do to lower your cost of living or to build wealth over time? Maybe it's not ideal, but are you willing to be a little bit uncomfortable in the short term in order to, make your financial future that much better in the long term?
There it is. Put the spotlight right there. I mean, what sacrifice would you make today so you could have a better life tomorrow? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, I don't know the caliber or where these comments are coming from that people didn't want to share a wall with someone. Are they currently renting now?
Most likely, yeah.
Okay. Are they homeowners now? if a homeowner said that, okay, I can give them some juice on that. But if they're currently renting, listening to the tenant above them banging on the floor or tenant next to them playing the loud music, I mean, you're paying that rent and getting no equity out of that at all.
Mhm.
Whereas, like you said, if I can make this temporary sacrifice for the long-term gain, I would do this all day long.
Mhm.
So what would you say would have been your biggest hurdle you had to overcome as a real estate investor? And how did you solve it?
Hmm. I mean, I think my biggest hurdle was probably just getting tapped out of my own capital after those first 3 deals and having to figure out, okay, well, what do I have to do now to keep going? Um, and that first BP con that I went to really was the catalyst that kind of opened my eyes to partnerships and made me look at that differently. I think my big point of resistance was that I had built the beauty business myself. So I wanted to do this myself too. Um, but realizing just how much faster you can go and how much quicker you can achieve your goals if you enter the right partnerships has been the biggest game changer to me. And it was really uncomfortable for me to put myself out there and, start to share with people, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm looking for. If you happen to know anyone who kind of fits this description, feel free to share with them what I've been doing. That was definitely really uncomfortable, but the infinite ROI that I've gotten on putting myself in that uncomfortable situation and putting myself out there has been so worth it. Um, so I think my tip that would come from that would just be if you're at a crossroads or if what you're doing is clearly not working, what do you have to do different? You can't just keep trying to do the same thing and have it not be working. Kind of like when I was making those creative offers on market for 6 months. I think at a certain point, I just realized this is not going to work. I put in the time. I've signed 3 offers a week in this whole time. It's not working. I have to do something different.
So, business owner for a long, long time, real estate investor 3+ years. You have a long, bright future ahead of you, young lady.
I hope so.
Well, you're 3 years in. I'm sitting here 20+ years. Okay, so I'm looking at the Caribbean. It's a little different, but I've made those sacrifices. I mean, so many weekends, my wife and I, while people were out going to the mall or going to picnics or stuff like that, my brothers and sisters know, my nieces and nephews know. Where's Uncle Brian? Well, he's out changing toilets and painting apartments. Okay, I made those sacrifices now, and here I am later in my life living the best version of me that I can imagine. And
Mhm.
you're going to get there so much sooner than I did. I mean, I'm never supposed to ask this of a young lady. How old are you?
I turned 32 last week.
32.
Mhm.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I did not start real estate investing until I was 38. By the time you're 38, you're going to be my neighbor in the condo next door.
I was just gonna say, I hope I'm living next to you.
Well, it's we're working on that. My neighbor down the hall and me, we're on the bookends, and we're working on trying to get that middle unit to sell. So yeah, please keep doing what you're doing. Keep working hard. I know you've got those people in your life saying, "Well, slow down and do this." Don't ramp up. Do more now. You're younger. You have more energy now.
Mhm.
Make the sacrifices now. By the time you're 30, your life is going to look totally different. I want to have you back on.
I know,
Yeah.
maybe in another year, I'll have done the 2 or 3 more deals like that one that I wanna do, and I'll be moving to Aruba.
Well, we'll hook up offline because in my circles, I deal with people all the time. And the numbers that you had on that 13 unit, I could probably help get you another 5 of those. So
Nice.
let's ramp
That'd
up,
be
have
good.
some fun. I have more questions.
Okay,
This answer,
let's hear them.
okay. Well, What's next for you in real estate, and why not get started today?
Next for me in real estate is to find my next ideal capital partner for another deal like that. And again, to do, ideally 2 or 3 very thoughtful deals like that this year. Probably 3 would be really good. Um, I'm always weary about trying to ramp up too much or too fast because especially with partnerships, like, you really have a duty to put your partners on a pedestal.
Yes.
And I never want to be I really don't have a desire to grow to the point where I have trouble putting all of my partners on a pedestal. So, the ideal life for me is just going to look like a handful of really great partners that I've done a handful of really great deals with, and that'll be good enough for me.
Yes.
Um, I don't think the goal is going to be to go as far and as fast as I possibly can. It's really just going to be to, do what I need to do to design my life in a nice, simple way and make my husband and I both work optional. So yeah, that's what's next. And why not now is that I would rather not rush. I think there are probably people that I could go into deals like this with right now, but if it doesn't really feel exactly right, then I would rather wait.
Well, you are going to put me on your mailing list. I do want to
I
look.
will, yes.
Yes, I would appreciate that. And, I keep saying I love doing the show. I meet folks like you. Everybody brings something different to the table. You bring opportunities to the table. You bring your story to the table, which is so important for other people to hear because they might be, banging their head on a wall in a life that they don't enjoy and see, okay, this is possible. It's not so much, can I do it, but is it even possible? And to hear your story and to know that it's possible, I think you're going to inspire so many people to move forward. So thank you. All right. So we're
Love
getting
that.
down to the fun questions here. Was there, in this question usually comes, the answer comes up purple. We'll see if we get there. Okay. Was
Okay.
there a book or some influence in your investing career that had the biggest impact on you? I think you mentioned a
Hmm.
book.
A book that had the biggest impact on me. Well, the first book that really was the catalyst for me to start investing in anyway was The Simple Path to Wealth by, I think, J.L. Collins, right? And for anyone who does want, something incredibly hands off and just tried and true, you don't need any knowledge on how to do it really. For anyone who wants to just invest through index funds, that is such an amazing book to just understand the stock market just as much as you need to grow your wealth that way. Now, I no longer have any money in the index funds personally because I've just seen the wealth building power of real estate, and index funds could never keep up with that. They could never compare if you are willing and able to do the extra work that comes with real estate. But for someone who is at the very beginning stages of retirement planning at all and wants to take that route, that book was really amazing.
Is there a second book that had an impact on you as a real estate investor?
Hmm. Second book was Quit Like a Millionaire, I think it's called. I
Quit,
honestly forget. Quit Like a Millionaire.
quit
Yeah.
like a
So,
million.
yeah, that book really gave me the confidence to get started and set a short timeline for myself. Um, the book is about, I believe, the youngest woman to ever retire in Canada. And she retired, I think, just shy of 30 years old through index fund investing. She's also pretty big in the fire community. But she just goes into like her life story, her partner's life story. Um, and it wasn't a very like easy upbringing that she had. And she talks about how that played into, her whole attitude about finances. And it was just a really, really inspiring book that made me say, okay, I don't have to do this the way that everyone else does this. I don't have to do retirement the way everyone else is doing it. I can do it. I can do it my own way.
What an amazing story. Jessie, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Just to recap some of the highlights here: business owner, woman business owner, which I always tip my hat. I know it's not easy. I'm not a woman, but kudos to you for your strength
Thank
and
you.
endurance. Coming up through the index funds, figuring out real estate, getting off the sidelines, jumping into the game, going to Chicago, figuring all that out, getting some great returns there, doing the house hack, providing for your family. Real estate is taking care of you, taking care of your family. I would definitely want to hook back up with you in another year or so and see what's going on. Would love to have you back on the show with more stories. Let's talk about the next 313 units or whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, I've asked a lot of real estate investors over my time, what's one thing you would have done differently? And I always get the same answer. They would have started sooner.
Mhm.
And then the second question I always ask kind of catches them off guard. What else would you have done? And they said they would have gone bigger faster. So for you to jump in on a commercial 13 after a twoplex, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, that was quite the jump. I mean, at the time it felt crazy, and looking back, it no longer feels crazy.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Our first commercial loan was a 7 unit. It's like, what am I doing? This is a commercial loan. I'm
yeah.
not ready for this. It's like now it's like, oh yeah, it's a commercial loan. You know, we crossed the threshold after 10 properties where everything we did was a commercial loan, no matter what we bought.
Mhm.
You know, it's just you get there, right? You don't start there, but you get there. So Jessie, this has been fantastic. I know you're all over Instagram. You've got a couple different handles out there. You've got the salon, you've got the real estate investing. How would you like our guests, if you would like our guests, to reach out to you and find you?
Instagram is definitely best. So on Instagram, I'm Jessie Dillon with an underscore at the end, and on there I share content about my investing journey, also content about the salon and personal content as well, because I feel like, anyone who's involved with either business, I like them to see, that I'm not just one of those two businesses. I'm a person that has multiple things going on. Um, so yeah, I share a little bit of everything on there.
Wonderful, wonderful. What, one
Mhm.
last question that's not on the show notes that you got. What's the one question I didn't ask in this interview that you wish I had?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I feel like you asked pretty good ones.
What's for lunch?
Hmm. What's for lunch? Diet Coke.
This has been fantastic, Jessie. I want to thank you so much for opening up, being so candid, sharing the stories, sharing some of the triumphs, the trials, the tribulations, and acts. Love the touchdowns as well. Um, I want to thank you again for all my real estate peeps. We have Jessie Dillon, entrepreneur. There, that covers both hats. Real estate investor, business owner, salon owner, house hacker, salon hacker, BP aficionado, just an all-around well-rounded business person. It's been my pleasure to have you on the show, Jessie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was probably one of my favorite recent interviews.
Thank you. I love doing this, right? So I hope that comes out. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to tag us out. So ladies and gentlemen, again, it's been my pleasure to have Jessie Dillon, our guest on the show tonight. And this is Brian Lucier from the Why Not Real Estate Podcast signing off, and we'll see you on the next one.